I may become a highwayman again, or I may simply be a single drop of rain, but I will remain, and I'll be back again and again and again and again and again.
1012, welcome back. Lacy McDonald told you we'd be coming right back. Man, it's kind of ominous to look at the webcams now. What has media done to us? You know, I was kind of thinking about that during the break, like even with like the war coverage and things like that,
Yes.
to really put into perspective, you know, like some of these natural disasters and things that are coming. It's kind of, it's like an eerie movie sometimes when you see some of those things and you see the ocean waters receding and you know what's going to come. It's very, I mean, just really scary, honestly.
It's really scary, and I don't think we are, as humans, equipped to deal with that much trauma that in our face at all times. I mean, the world has always had really horrific things going on,
Right.
but we used to be a little bit more removed. You know, you'd read about it in the newspaper the next day, you'd get a letter from a relative weeks after something horrific happened, and now we are experiencing it in real time with people all over the world, which, I mean, on one hand, then you understand how horrific something is, and you can empathize, and you can be more motivated to do what you can to help. But it also means that we're always in this state of anxiety, and I think it really can affect just the average person's mental health.
Well, and honestly, on top of that, too, it's a great point. On top of that, I mean, just, you know, with the Marina connection and how many folks really do snowbird down in the Florida region. And this is the time where normally folks start to make their trek, and you got relatives down there. I know my aunt and uncle and all of them that live in Tampa and are kind of bracing for impact, and it's like it just really kind of it modernizes these disasters in a way that just kind of makes it to where it's just kind of alarming for so many. You know, it's just very kind of in your face.
I lived in Sarasota for several years.
Did you like it?
I loved it.
It's a nice part of Florida.
Yeah, but yeah, like I'm seeing these pictures, and it's
hits
places
you.
I've been and near where I live.
Man, it's just wild, and just to see that though, the ocean receding, just bizarre. You know. Well, you know, honestly, what I find fascinating is reading about some of the natural disasters in the 1800s that, I mean, the way that they're detailed in the writing, it's like Armageddon times 50 sometimes for some of those tornadoes, especially in the Dust Bowl and all of that. Could you imagine if we had cameras, I mean, real high-definition cameras to see some of that back then? Isn't that wild? Because there wasn't a lot of buildings to block wind or any of those things. It was just open plains in the Midwest, you know? And that's just, it's something I think about when it comes to like weather and all of those type of events that hit us.
Yeah.
I wouldn't last. 100 years ago, murder! Dun, dun, dun!
Yes.
I
couldn't be more dramatic.
I was ready for this. I was ready to talk.
Sorry, I dropped the ball there.
You know, I always find old trials fascinating too.
But like, old trials are like dramatizations of old trials.
Ooh. Good point. Continue.
So this week's topic isn't just murder, it's an escaped murderer. Because 100 years ago, he almost turned himself in for a crime committed 130 years ago.
Hit some record scratches.
Yeah.
Drop the mic. So this is actually really kind of interesting. I was reading this a couple of days ago, and I mean, this is the fact that there's not a movie about this guy, honestly, is kind of fascinating.
I know. I kept like interrupting coworkers' real work to be like, guess what? I just found out about this murder. And they were like, okay, Lacy, maybe you should write this all down somewhere else and then you can share it with us.
We'll read it in a couple of days.
Well, the part of the issue was I was trying to, distill this down into an article, and there were all these like twisty paths that I went down at the same time. And so I needed to tell somebody about those, but that it didn't all make it in here.
I love this.
Yeah.
I mean, can I just kind of, I feel like the way to open this up is St. Louis, October 1. I mean, so elegantly written, too.
Yes.
Man, for a murderer, this guy knew how to write. I escaped from the St. Louis jail in 1896 while under the sentence of death for murder. I am now old and feeble and will give myself up. if you promise not to hang me, I'm willing to go to the penitentiary. Put a notice in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch giving your promise, and I'll give myself up to anybody you mention in the notice. Yours truly, Noble Shepard, and welcome to Halloween season.
Noble Shepard. His name is Noble
Welcome to
Shepard.
Halloween season. I mean, it doesn't
you added
get...
that part. That's not in the original letter.
But it should be. I mean, that is about as creepy as you can get. So take me to the story of Noble Shepard, who is a real person.
Right, real person. And the article with this letter is the first thing that I found when I was trying to figure out what I was going to write for this week. And I thought, well, I got to look more into this. And so this man sent this letter to the governor of Missouri.
Oh.
Put it in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch as his way of giving it to the governor. So he sent a letter that was postmarked in St. Louis but didn't have like a address. Sent this to the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, and they published it. And so apparently, this didn't make it into the article, but apparently, this was 1924, so they had no idea who this guy was. They had to go through their files to even figure out what he had done and what had happened and all of that.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but he had killed a man and a woman in 1894. Christmas Eve, 1894. It was actually extremely horrific. And then went through trials and was sentenced to hang and escaped from the Four Courts jail building in St. Louis 2 days before his death sentence could be carried out. So he used a saw to cut through a plate in the back of the cell, crawled through a hole. One of the articles said he actually climbed over the scaffolding that was supposed to hang him, and then went out to freedom. There were reports that he was in different parts of Illinois. There was one that he was in Mexico. But 30 years later, here he is in St. Louis.
Still living just right next door to the jail he broke out of.
I mean, kind of.
Right.
And so he was like, all right, I'll come back if you promise not to hang me.
But if you're old and feeble, wouldn't you just want to kind of go anyway? You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's a couple of people that would think that way. I mean, if your back's hurting and you're sick...
No, I mean...
You get what I point?
But hanging, I don't know.
That's true. It's not like you're getting something... Yeah, I mean, you are getting... Now, the question, though, for this, seriously, is... number one, this is... The movie portion of it is the love triangle that he claimed. Yes. But the other part to this that I find so fascinating is for so many people, they always go, well, now when folks get the death sentence, you're waiting 20, 30 years on death row. And people always go, well, when did that start happening? Well, apparently it's been there because this happened in 1894, and this is 1924, right? And he's writing a letter, and he escaped what, in 19...
He escaped 30 years. He escaped... He committed the murder in 1894, and then 1896 was when he was going to be killed.
Right. So, but even 2 years for back then to be on death row, is kind of a little like it's not the conveyor belt people made it out to be.
Yes. He was not arrested right away. He was arrested within a couple weeks. It took him a while to figure out what had actually happened.
I stand corrected then.
And then they had a trial and everything. But I mean, it was quite a bit of time later. It wasn't just an immediate...
Like the next day and they'd make it out in some...
Yeah. Because usually if that's the case, then there was not a due process of law and everything. So they had to, have a trial and all of that. But the short story, and part of the reason I have a bunch of sources on here is that if you want to go find out more, you can read these. I have them all at the library. But the short story is that Thomas and Lizzie, who were the people that were murdered, lived on a houseboat in St. Louis. Noble Shepard was their neighbor. He lived in a tent nearby. He claimed that he and Lizzie had an intimate relationship, and that Thomas, and the reason I'm using first names, part of the reason I'm using first names is that they all had very convoluted last names, which I'll get to in a second. But Noble said Thomas had caught him and Lizzie together and attacked Lizzie, and so Noble was, defending her and accidentally killed Thomas. But this was after several days that they even figured out that he had been the one that killed Thomas, because first they just found Lizzie extremely injured on the houseboat by herself. A third of her skull was gone. She had been
my God,
attacked with an axe. I mean, it was horrific. And they didn't find Thomas or Noble, and so they didn't know who was to blame. Thought it might be Thomas initially, and then his dog kept barking at like a spot in the sand for days, and they finally dug it up, and that's where Thomas's body had been buried.
Oh my!
And then they arrested Noble, who was very flippant about the whole thing. I mean, they took him to the morgue to look at Thomas's body and were like, "Did you kill this guy?" And he was like, "I don't know. Maybe like take some more of the mud off of his face." Like he was so, and then they brought him into Lizzie's hospital room, because Lizzie, despite the fact that a third of her skull was missing, lived for another month.
Oh my God.
It was horrific. Yes. And so they brought him. They brought this guy into the hospital room of the person that he had attempted to murder. And she kept saying, "This is the murderer." She was not super coherent. But for a time, they actually thought that she might survive. So it was...
Wow.
And then she also completely denied having any sort of intimate relationship with this guy, Noble's story kept changing. He just kind of changed depending on what they found and what evidence they had and all of that. And then Thomas's mother came to town to identify his body, and there was money missing, there was a watch missing, and they found out that Noble had pawned the watch. And so at this point, both the police and family members were pretty sure that it wasn't a jealousy issue. It wasn't motivated by an intimate relationship. It was greed, and he had just taken the opportunity to murder some people for some money. So I was also, determined to kind of clear Lizzie's name, because I felt like she, not only did she get murdered, but she, her reputation was just destroyed in this way by this guy. Luckily, all of that was happening in the 1800s at that time. So it wasn't like her reputation had to be cleared years later. And still, I mean, there are articles from the beginning that are about how she was, cheating on her significant other and all that stuff. So despite the best efforts of the newspaper at the time and then me now to kind of clear that up, and we'll never know for sure, but to clear that up to the best of our abilities, she still, had all these things written about her and told about her by this awful guy. And then she died. And obviously Thomas had already died. And so his body is buried in Newport, Kansas, and Lizzie's body is buried at the Alton Cemetery.
Could you imagine losing a third of your skull in a hospital bed in 1924?
In 1894.
Oh, in 1894.
Even more,
excuse me.
30 fewer years of medical.
So exactly, 130 years ago, where they gave you a mockingbird to peck at your darn scab to heal you. And you got a buffoon in the newspaper or anywhere writing about potential falsehoods about your romantic life.
Right.
That's terrible.
It's terrible.
Man, and we think we had a bad day.
It was, right. It puts everything in perspective.
But the Alton connection here I find fascinating just because of the fact that her dad was actually a Civil War Union veteran and an Alton police officer, too, and a prize fiddler.
Okay, so that I had to do some more research on. That's another thing that doesn't make it into the article, but I had to put that in there because every article mentioned that he was a prize fiddler. I mean,
was he like the Elvis of fiddler?
Yes. Be about, like how devastated he was about his daughter's death, and also prize fiddler. So I was
That's not funny, but it's funny.
I mean, it was so
That's so local news. That is so local news.
So I looked more into it, and it turned out when he was a child, he'd had some sort of accident where he cut off several of his toes, and while he was recovering, he couldn't do anything else, so he learned how to play the fiddle really, 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 really well. And then he was this just master fiddler for the rest of his life. So that's what people knew him for. But yeah, very, very important local fiddler.
I guess you could always count on him to lose the foot chase, huh?
That's what I need to do there.
Okay, back to my stupidity. With that being said, what I find fascinating is just the way people live too. You know, like these locations are very like non-traditional murder scenes. You know, like house and all. Like you wouldn't think. You know, you got the marina houseboats and folks who live there, but houseboats and tents and. It's very fascinating, actually. Like, it gives me the vibe of a settler's town in a settler's area, you know?
Well, yeah, and I tried to look at some of the Sanborn maps for St. Louis to figure out, like, exactly where. And it was further down the river from where the location of the Sanborn maps in this time period were. But, yeah, this is just, like, going to the foot of a street in St. Louis, in downtown St. Louis, and there are houseboats and tents.
Right.
But like that was normal. It wasn't. They were a more permanent kind of fixture there. But yeah, it was really confusing too because I had to kind of try to figure out like what was normal and what was like going back to the name thing. Thomas he was going by Thomas Morton, but his actual last name when his mom came to town was Thomas George Gilroy. So Morton was a name that he took, but he'd also been the proprietor of a traveling variety show. So it may very well have just been his stage name. Like, I don't think that there was anything necessarily nefarious about that. And then Lizzie was Lizzie Pack Leahy. Lizzie Pack was her name she was born with, and then Leahy was the name of her estranged husband. And then some things said Lizzie Morton. So some things said that they were married. Some things said that they were living together, as husband and wife. And then she had apparently, one of the Alton Telegraph articles said that, she had introduced him to her family. Like, she'd been estranged from her husband for quite a bit of time at this point. So there was no overlap there, but she introduced him as her fiance. Like, it was a serious enough relationship that's why there's a quote that said Noble Shepard's story of his illicit relations with Lizzie Morton, Thomas Morton's wife or mistress, is now regarded as only one more of the many lies he has told concerning the tragedy, because they weren't even quite sure like what category to put. Now you would just say like significant other or partner or whatever.
Right.
But it was so rigid in that time period that it's kind of like wife or mistress. There was no like in between sort of description of that. So then you're dealing with all these like morality lenses of what was appropriate for that time period. So yeah, it was like I said, very twisty. And that doesn't even get to the 1924 section of it.
Yeah, whenever he just never turned himself in.
Yeah, okay. So Governor Hyde basically said, yeah, no, you should definitely turn yourself in, but I can't make any promises. We'll look positively on the fact that you're turning yourself in, but I'm not going to put in the Post-Dispatch, like, you're good dude.
To go. Get out of death free card. You know?
So here's my probably favorite part about this whole thing. So he writes back. Do you want to read the letter or do you want me to read the letter?
You go for it.
Okay. So this is the second letter from Noble Shepard, printed on October 13th, 1924, so just a couple weeks after the original one. I saw your reply to my letter in the Post-Dispatch, and I think it would be dangerous to give myself up. It would be suicide on my part, as I have no friends or money to help me. I would never have escaped if I got a term in the penitentiary. But just before I escaped, I saw a man named Fitzgerald hanged, and I made up my mind that hanging was not right. Here it is.
Neither was butchering people.
This will close my case. No hard feelings on my part. Yours truly, Noble Shepard.
And that's the mind of a psycho.
We're good now. Yeah, that was the moment where I was like, okay, this guy didn't have any remorse at the time that it happened. And 30 years later is like, nah, I'm good. I'm just going to...
this guy is like the precursor to the Zodiac guy.
Yeah, he's just...
Goodness!
I know he killed two people. I wonder what he was doing in that other 30 years. And he apparently had like a wife and a kid somewhere else too didn't know what had happened to him. And then they, read about this.
That's the sequel.
Yeah.
That's the sequel.
Yeah. So I don't know I couldn't find any other records about him after that.
this was pretty good. I like this one. What are you writing about next, or what are we talking about next week?
We are talking about the peice bird.
Cuckoo!
Yeah.
Oh wait, no, that's the battlehawks.
That's all right. We don't know what the peice bird sounded like.
And Noble Shepard roams free to this day. I'm just kidding. He doesn't.